Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Look Into Bitcoin, and today we're going to be doing a Bitcoin roundup to discuss the current market conditions. We're going to try and get some insight into Bitcoin's rather boring sideways price action and how we should consider positioning ourselves going forward. We'll be using a number of resources, all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now I'm just on the BTC USD chart on TradingView, just so we can get a nice overview of the current price action. And if we drop down onto the daily, you'll see it has been rather boring. Apart from the last day or two, we've had a few percent up, but realistically, we've been in the same range we have been for months. However, with all this mundane price action, this does actually give us some interesting insights to look at. If we actually go back to the weekly chart, I've already loaded up here an indicator, the standard deviation, which can show us the volatility of Bitcoin at the current moment. We can actually see right now, Bitcoin's volatility or standard deviation is at some of its lowest levels ever. If we actually draw a line at the current level of volatility or standard deviation, we can see in the past 10 years, we've only ever had volatility this low on two separate occasions. And they were the previous two bear cycles towards the tail end of that. So if we actually look at the 2015 bear cycle here, just as we dipped into this very low period of volatility, it actually signified that Bitcoin was coming to the very end of the bear market. We actually had a 40% price move to the upside following this low volatility before actually dipping just slightly on a wick beneath where we currently were to put in a new cycle low. But ultimately, we closed around the same price as this low volatility period, and it really signified the kickstart of the next bull cycle, going from just a few $100s to near $20,000. The second instance of volatility this low was just before the big dip in the 2018 cycle, where Bitcoin was at about $6,000 for weeks, if not months on end, before finally dipping to around $3,000 or $4,000, and again signifying the end of the bear market. So we have two instances of volatility being this low in the past. One almost signified the start of the new bull cycle, and one really signified just before the capitulation happened, before Bitcoin dropped nearly another 50% to the downside. So right now, as Bitcoin volatility is as low as it nearly ever has been, it will be interesting to see, as we finally do get some volatile price action again, whether the move will be to the upside or to the downside. One thing we can even do is compare, after these levels of low volatility, what the price action actually reacted like following this. And if we line that up with Bitcoin's current price action, we can see here in 2015, when Bitcoin experienced this low volatility, we had, as discussed, this big price increase, which may take us, if we were to follow the exact same line, to around $26,000 before a sharp decrease to around $15,000. What we can also see is with the 2018 cycle, if we were to follow that, and this was the new floor before capitulating even lower, we could see prices of around $11,500. Now, one thing to consider is Bitcoin as an asset class has grown fairly substantially, both in size and maturity, and we are already down 70%. So it'll be interesting to see if we can have a volatile move as big as these, or if we'll have a reaction more in line with more traditional markets, which may be a slow and steady rise to the upside rather than a very volatile and speculative move. Although if we were to follow these to the upside just for fun, in the 2018 cycle we'd reach about $130,000 in around the end of 2025, or in mid-2025 we would follow the 2015 cycle, potentially around $1 million in Bitcoin. If we move on to some more on-chain metrics, we can see there are a few very interesting things to consider as well. The Bitcoin hash rate, for example, I know we've covered this quite a lot recently, but it continues to match to even new all-time highs. Despite the relatively boring and somewhat bearish price action, Bitcoin miners are continuing to pump as much resource as possible into Bitcoin mining, as they may have a very bullish outlook on the future and are trying to invest now while prices are cheap. So as we can relate the Bitcoin hash rate to the Bitcoin hash ribbons, the fact that we had a hash ribbon buy signal just a few months ago, and this has continued to match to the upside, is very bullish. Every single time in Bitcoin's price history we've had one of these hash ribbon buy signals, it has historically been a great time to buy, and the months and weeks following has seen rather large increases in Bitcoin's price. So is that going to happen again? Well, we've been waiting a few weeks for any sort of positive price reaction, but we'll again have to wait and see. One interesting thing to note, given Bitcoin's very low volatility right now, it seems a lot of traders are trying to stack up their leverage positions to try and bet on what the next move is going to be. If we look at the Bitcoin open interest chart, we can see an obvious trend to the upside. We've gone from nearly 250,000 BTC in open positions on the derivatives market to over 450,000 BTC in current open positions. Now, this is a huge increase in open interest and a huge increase in derivative volumes. So a lot of people are seemingly getting impatient with the borrowing price action and trying to leverage up in anticipation of a big move either to the upside or to the downside. And finally, we have two charts to really try and guess if we were to move to the downside, where might be our next level of support. We have been hovering beneath the previous all-time high a fairly substantial amount recently, so obviously that hasn't been a key area of support we were expecting it to be. So looking at some on-chain data, where could we maybe see a positive price reaction if we were to make new lows? Well, using the price forecast tool, we can actually zoom in and see there are two lines of on-chain support that could hold up price if we were to dip lower, and that is the balance price and the CVDD. Now, the CVDD is the cumulative value of coin days destroyed, and the balance price is calculated using the realized price and the transferred price. I won't go too in-depth into the formulas and calculations behind all of these lines now. We have done a video previously on the Bitcoin forecast tools, so I'd recommend checking that indicator explainer video out, or just beneath the chart here on lookintobitcoin.com. It goes into a fair amount of detail on how these lines are actually calculated and the background behind them. And these currently are hovering at around $15,800 and about $16,800. So around that $16,000 region potentially could be a good last line of support for the Bitcoin bulls. If we look at the previous two bear cycles, we can see the Bitcoin price actually bounced off these two lines on both occasions. Here in 2015, when the Bitcoin price was only a few $100s, around $200 or $300, and again in 2018 when Bitcoin crashed from the previously discussed $6,000-ish floor to around $3,000 or $4,000. Again, these two on-chain lines gave the last line of support and actually marked the end of the bear market and a great opportunity to buy. So if we do dip to these lower levels, potentially it is a great area to accumulate more Bitcoin. And finally, we have the Bitcoin Rainbow Price Chart Indicator. Now, we've discussed this a few times recently in the past few weeks and months, but really this is another last line of support that we could look to if Bitcoin is to make new lows. Similar to the CVDD and balance price, Bitcoin has bounced off the bottom level of this Bitcoin Rainbow Price Chart Indicator a number of times in its past, so it definitely is an area to watch if we were to go that low again. Currently, the lowest level of this rainbow is sitting at around $17,500. So if again we were to experience some volatility to the downside, this may be a key area to watch to see if Bitcoin can hold support there, and again another great area for potential investments. So just to summarize, we're currently experiencing some of the lowest levels of volatility Bitcoin has ever experienced on the weekly chart. And in each of the previous circumstances where this has occurred, it was followed by a huge move to either the upside or the downside in Bitcoin's price. So it'll be interesting to take note of the next few weeks and months to see if Bitcoin has an explosion either to the upside or to the downside. We can also see that the hash rate continues to increase exponentially. This is definitely more of a bullish indication as miners are willing to pour in resources to secure the Bitcoin network in anticipation of future prices being much higher than they currently are. We can also see that most on-chain and market cycle charts are indicating that this is a good time to accumulate BTC, although some data points such as the CVDD, the balance price and the bottom of the Rainbow Price Chart Indicator indicate that we could bottom anywhere from $15,800 to around $17,000, but this is changing daily, so it's worth keeping an eye on all of those metrics. But one thing we do have to consider is that global fundamental factors are still having a very large influence on all markets, including Bitcoin. So until we can either decouple from traditional markets or we actually see a great sentimental shift across all markets, it's likely going to continue that Bitcoin is either going to have some negative price action or at the very least continue sideways until we can really kick off the new bull cycle. If you like this video, please visit lookintobitcoin.com where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private trading view scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And don't forget to let me know in the comments down below what you think is going to happen in the Bitcoin price next. With this low volatility, do you foresee a break to the upside or potentially to the downside to maybe even new lows? Let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.